Hey everybody, one of the biggest stories of the week once again was Bill Belichick, the UNC Tar Heels. The story just continues to develop and you have been leading a lot of our coverage. Brian Murphy here with me, so I wanted to get sort of the week's roundup of news and you've broken a lot of it. Let's first start with the news conference. We heard from Bill Belichick for the first time since our initial reporting about the turmoil in the locker room.
Yeah, Pat Welter did a fantastic job detailing some of the divisions in the locker room and some of that the players and the parents are blaming Bill Belichick for that culture. He finally met with the media on Monday and refuted reports that he was looking for a buyout to get out of his contract with UNC. He did not really address the reports of the division in the locker room, didn't refute those at all. Just said that he's working his process that has worked at all of his previous stops and thinks it will continue to work here at UNC. He called it a learning curve. It's been a steep learning curve for Bill Belichick.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot to talk about here. Hey, if you like our reporting, we cover so many different topics here at WRAL. Our team is working so hard in the newsroom to cover every different aspect of North Carolina. If you like what we're doing, please do like and subscribe our WRAL YouTube page. It tells us to keep doing what we're doing and, of course, to bring it to you on multiple platforms, including here on YouTube. So please do like and subscribe our WRAL YouTube page. What was your overall takeaway of that press conference?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought some of the stuff that he said about the process was really interesting. For the first time, he acknowledged that the roster construction maybe didn't go exactly the way that UNC wanted. General Manager Mike Lombardi in charge of bringing in all those new players, 70 new players to the UNC program. And what we've seen is sort of a talent drain. This team is probably not as good as most people thought it was in the preseason. And Bill Belichick, for the first time, acknowledging we got in late on the portal. We didn't necessarily get the guys that we desperately wanted, but we got guys that were available, guys that maybe didn't like the offers that they had and came to UNC. And I think we're seeing some of that on the field. I thought that was the big takeaway. It was for the first time I kind of heard Bill Belichick say, hey, it's going to take a little time here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, and sometimes you need that, just that take a step back, sort of evaluate. We'll see how they play in the next few games. They've got that big one that's coming up today on Friday. This is the day of our recording, on Friday against Cal. One of the people who makes so many of the headlines and who gets talked about so much, not any of the players on the team, rather his girlfriend, Jordon Hudson. And let me show you the most recent news article that we've got about her that you wrote up, Murph. The headline is, "New video shows extent of Jordon Hudson's influence over Belichick's media projects before UNC hire." So this was we're talking about before he got hired as the head coach of the Tar Heels. What's this article all about?
Yeah, a lot of this reporting comes from Pablo Torre, influential sports media reporter and new podcaster who's covered the Jordon Hudson story pretty extensively. But in his latest episode, he got leaked footage of Bill Belichick's podcast that he did during the 2024 football season. Now, he was out at the Patriots at that time, could not get another job. And so in order to stay relevant, he hosted a podcast with Mike Lombardi, a familiar name to UNC fans, and former defensive coordinator Matt Patricia, who's now at Ohio State. Jordon Hudson, Pablo Torre was able to track down some footage of Jordon Hudson sort of interjecting in those podcast taping sessions about the graphics, about the look of the studio, things that seem pretty minor, but I think that was the importance of it. She was very heavily involved in that, basically saying, I could whip up these graphics in a couple of minutes. What are you guys doing here? We're paying for this, and this is the kind of work that we're getting. I mean, very, very involved. Now, a couple things to note. Jordon Hudson filed a trademark in Massachusetts for Coach Show LLC. That was the name of this show. It's called Coach with Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick has mentioned several times that Jordon is in charge or helps with his personal media appearances. So my question is, was this her job? Was she acting in capacity of her job? And it certainly comes off as her believing that she knows more than the professionals in the room. But the second question would be, did Bill Belichick empower her to be that decision maker and to be the one who said, no, these graphics aren't right or this setup isn't right? Either way, I think that raises questions, but it was a very interesting look at how much influence she was able to exert over Bill Belichick. And don't forget, when Bill Belichick was hired, he asked that Jordon Hudson be included on his emails. One of the responses that she had to that was, how are we going to publicize the hiring of Steve Belichick? She wanted to shape the narrative around that. And then, of course, the famous CBS interview where she interjected and said, we're not talking about that. So we've seen this not only before Bill Belichick was hired at UNC, but since he's been hired, that she really is working to shape the narrative around some of the things that Bill Belichick's dealing with.
So this isn't just gossip. This can be substantive and informative about how their personal relationship and their business relationship could actually potentially have influence over his program. Is that right? Because I got to tell you, Murph, like at first jump, I was like, gosh, man, we really are obsessed with her. Like as a media, industry, like we're obsessed with her. But then I started to think about it a little bit more and think about the things that you just mentioned, and it actually does help inform, like potentially, what kind of involvement she may have in the program, and should we be thinking about that a bit more?
Yeah, let's be clear. UNC has said she has no involvement in the football program. She only is involved in Bill's personal media opportunities. But one thing Pablo Torre laid out is that there are two big spheres of influence around Bill Belichick. One is Jordon Hudson, and one is Mike Lombardi. And Pablo Torre, at least based on his reporting, says that Jordon Hudson and Michael Lombardi don't get along very well. That it was Michael Lombardi who was telling others that Jordon Hudson had been banned from the UNC football facilities, if you remember that story. And so now you have these two, competing interests battling for Bill Belichick. It does speak to some of the maybe the dysfunction, if you want to use that word, around the program. If you have two people who are highly influential in the coach's ear, one saying one thing, one saying another, they're not rowing the boat in the same direction, you get a recipe for maybe some of the dysfunction that we've seen.
Well, and I don't think that that's uncommon to have, you're the head of something, you're the leader, and you've got competing voices kind of in your ears. But I think what's standing out to me is, what's Jordon Hudson's football resume here? And so what kind of influence does someone who doesn't necessarily have any football experience, what kind of influence does she have on arguably the greatest football coach of all time, who is now leading the UNC Tar Heels? Is that fair?
Yeah, and you wonder about these side projects, right? We've heard about the Hulu documentary, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere now. Pablo Torre talked about there was talk of continuing this coach podcast in Chapel Hill. That was eventually scrapped, but they had rented space in Chapel Hill. They had bought all the equipment for it. So you wonder how much these side projects are taking up time from Bill Belichick or even headspace from Bill Belichick. You
mentioned Michael Lombardi, and we're going to talk about him in just about 2 minutes. But before we talk about that and the headline that you gave us this week about Michael Lombardi, I do have one more question for you about Jordon Hudson. You said that UNC has said she's got no involvement in the football program. Can I just say, as someone who has been watching the sidelines over the last few weeks, like I sort of call bunk on that, because she has been on the sidelines. She has been walking around like right shoulder to shoulder with Bill Belichick, before a game, maybe even during a game. You can clarify that. But I mean, she is very much, it appears to me, involved.
She's very visible. I'll put it that way. Before games, she does walk out on the field. She's very visible in the outfits that she's choosing to wear.
Yeah.
Post game, she always comes to the press conferences. She's been seen chatting with the athletic director, with other high personnel, the chancellor at times. So she's very visible before and after the games. The camera does seem to find her. I don't think she's calling plays. I don't think she's doing things like that. But certainly she is a presence, at least on game days, that we can obviously see.
Visible, that's a good word to use. Okay, let's talk about Michael Lombardi. I'm going to pull up the headline here. So here's the headline. Saudi Arabia hosted UNC's Lombardi on preseason fundraising trip. What's this all about?
Yeah, there are so many elements to this story, but the news of it is that in the weeks before the regular season opener against TCU, Michael Lombardi, the general manager, right-hand man of Bill Belichick, traveled to Saudi Arabia on what UNC is terming an exploratory fundraising trip. First of all, why Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia is a country with enormous wealth that we've seen really get involved in sports. They've started Live Golf, which is a competitor to the PGA Tour. They've brought soccer stars like Cristiano Ronaldo to play for the Saudi domestic league. They have brought the WWE over there, boxing. They brought a bunch of comedians over there. Some call it sports washing, a way of using their money to bolster their PR for a country that's had numerous human rights violations, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other reason is, why would North Carolina even need this type of money? Well, as we've covered extensively, the cost of college athletics is just going up and up and up. And we've seen programs, conferences, even the entire sport look for ways to generate more revenue. And we've seen that with private equity. We've seen it with private capital. The Big Ten is considering taking on a $2 billion investment from a California pension system. And so as the cost of paying players, the cost of coaching salaries continues to go up, you see teams and programs, conferences getting more creative about where they can find additional revenue. So that sort of explains why Saudi Arabia might be interested, why UNC might be interested. We're told that Lombardi was invited and the trip was paid for by a Saudi individual, not the government, not the PIF, the public investment fund that's been used to pay for a lot of these things. And at least as of now, the reporting is, and what we've been told is that there was no investment made, that UNC has not gotten investment from Saudi Arabia at this point. But to go on a trip 2 weeks before the season opener, to take your assistant general manager, as Pablo Torre reported, means that it was pretty serious. You don't just get on a plane and hop to Saudi Arabia if it's the first time you've met somebody. So we're told it was based on an individual that wanted to support Bill Belichick. We'll see what comes of this, but I think it points to a lot of those things, including UNC's need for money.
I'm curious, did Chancellor Roberts weigh in on this at all?
I've not heard from Chancellor Roberts and his thoughts. I mean, he does talk about the global brand of UNC and the fact that, I think he's told this story before, but when he visited China or has visited other countries, he sees that UNC logo on hats, on shirts, on various things. And so sports has been very important to him. And I imagine opening another market like Saudi Arabia and bringing in money for a university that's in desperate need of money would certainly be helpful. Now, there are, again, a host of issues that come with that. But we have not heard from Chancellor Roberts on this, and we haven't really heard why or what the money would have been used for, how much money, what Saudi Arabia or this individual would have gotten in return. There's a lot of questions about this story to me.
Would there be questions from the folks over at the NCAA?
I don't think so. I mean, we'll see what the actual terms of the deal were or what was discussed, but I don't know that it would be an NCAA violation or even reach their intent. I don't think so. I mean, any more than the Big Ten trying to get private equity money into their league. This, unfortunately, is where college athletics is right now. Yeah,
exactly. Becoming more and more professional as the years go on. Hey, there was a lot this week, and makes me wonder what next week is going to bring.
Well, I think first it'll bring a game, to end this week on Friday night at California. The one thing we've heard from Bill Belichick and his assistant coaches all week is we're making progress. We're making progress. Follow the process. I think fans, media, everybody associated with Carolina was like, well, let's see some of that progress, right? You've been blown out by Clemson, blown out by UCF, blown out by TCU. Do you go on the road to the West Coast and get blown out again? Where is this progress that you keep telling us you're making? Yeah,
exactly. And what does that tell us about potentially the locker room and some more of our reporting? If you want to learn more about any of these stories that Murph was just talking about, just go to WRAL.com. He's got extensive reporting, Pat Welcher, of course, as well. The whole team is really working this story from all angles. So appreciate all of your insights.
Thank you, Ashley.
We'll touch base again. Thanks.